Ready, ma'am?
Let me think about it. Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Keep It Moving with Marsha Jews, WEAA 88.9, your source for cool jazz and the voice of the community. Our next guest is attorney Todd Michael, the lifelong Miami-Dade resident. He joined the Haggard Law Firm in 2009, and in 2014 he was named partner at the firm. He handles a wide array of the firm's cases involving wrongful death, and he was lead counsel in the case of Snell versus Family Food Saver. The trial resulted in a verdict of over $5 million for the Snell family. It was one of the largest liability verdicts in the state of Florida. Also top 40 under 40, and has been doing the top, and he's one of the top 100 super lawyers in South Florida, as well as best lawyer in America and Florida's Trends Legal Elite. Oh Lord, that's a lot. Todd, how you doing?
I'm pretty good, Marsha. How are you?
I'm very good. But what we're going to talk about, you have this illustrious career, but my goodness, you wrote a article for the newspaper, and that was very, very powerful, that you've spent 38 years as a white boy and man in America, and actually a Jewish man, but it says, I'm not usually identified as a Jew, and he live in a place full of Jews, and I've never faced a minute of anti-Semitism. I can tell you, being a white man in America is good. It's great. It's all that it's cracked up to be. The opportunity is limitless. The fear is minimal. I've never spent one day as a black boy or man. I've spent 5 years and 4 months as the father of a black boy, an amazing boy, a smart, funny, talented, cute, sweet boy who has significant opportunity and privilege and doesn't know any bounds on what he can achieve. A boy that I've been able to protect thus far from the realities that a child like Tamir Rice has had to face. But I know I can't protect him forever, and I know that at some point, and maybe at many points, he will face a different experience as a boy or man in America. And that's just the opening. Todd, what made you write this?
Well, Marsha, I think the only thing that's changed since the time I wrote that to now is now I've somehow gone from 38 years to 39.
Okay.
But, I have a son, a wonderful, wonderful child. He is biracial. My wife is black. We've got our second child on the way. Got him just about 2 months now. And, I've always thought that I was pretty conscious and always thought that I was pretty aware of what was going on, but you start to feel things differently when they start to affect you personally. And unfortunately, we've also seen this terrible spike in the last few years, which, of things that have always been happening, but maybe have been receiving a little more publicity, of people dying at the hands of police, dying at the hands of quote-unquote neighborhood watchmen. And the one thing that we seem to find in common is the color of their skin. Mm-hmm. And when the Tamir Rice incident happened, you've got a little kid who is doing something that we all did, playing with toy guns in a park, and ends up losing his life for it. It just hit me how different the reality of what my son is going to have to face is from what I had to face.
So now that you're in this, though, and we're watching all chapter and verse, what do you say to him, or how do you feel, or what is it that you and your wife have said to him, or what do you think you're going to say to him based on the realities of what we've been seeing with social media?
It is a conversation that we're obviously going to have. He is, like I said, 6 years old. He is an upbeat, happy child. He lives in a world that's been pretty good to him so far, a world where he's been, fortunate to be protected from some of those things. And one thing is, in our house, race isn't something that we spend a lot of time talking about. Obviously, we talk about history, but he's still 6 years old. He's still very innocent. He sees different skin colors away. My dad had black hair. My mom had blonde hair. Mm-hmm. Growing up, that was what was normal. And to him, it's normal at this point in his life to have parents who are of two different races, because he's not old enough to have, everything that society pushes down our throats pushed on him yet. At this point, at this age, my preference is to, continue to love him, continue to teach him the positive, But I also recognize, and something I recognized from even before he was born, that there's certain things that I have to get him prepared for that I never had to deal with.
And how are you preparing for it yourself as a white male?
Before I'm a white male or anything else, I'm his father.
Okay.
And my second son who's about to be born, I'm his father. Mm-hmm. And, my only concern is giving them the best possible tools that they can have. And just prior to the time when he was born, it was something that was weighing on my mind a lot. God, am I going to be able to prepare him for everything he's going to have to face? And I was fortunate enough to see Professor Ogletree speak. He had just written his book about, if you recall the book, I can't think of the title right now, but he spoke with different prominent black men in America, people who are well-known, people who are well-respected, people who, come from every walk of life, professionals, doctors, lawyers. And the book had a part that was really a collection of indignities that they had to deal with, either at the hands of the police or at the hands of other people, simply because of the way they looked, and real prominent people, judges, doctors. After he spoke, and I gave him my book to sign, and we talked, and I told him I had a biracial son coming and some of the things that were concerning me, and he said, just keep your head up, stay the guy you are, and stay positive. I have a feeling you're going to be just fine. Mm-hmm. But the reality is I know that I can't prepare him for everything.
Right.
And it's one of those things that constantly weighs on me. Do you wait for the shoe to drop and wait for something to happen, or do you try to prepare him beforehand? And how can you prepare him beforehand, because you don't know what's going to come at him? Right.
I think too, when we look at this, who's ready for that conversation? Even a person, black parents are having a difficult time having the conversation. But the conversation at some point has to be had, that there is a reality. And when you are sitting there and social media is everywhere and children they're participating in different activities, with sports and what have you, has he brought up anything about what he's experiencing in some of his extracurriculum activities, or are kids talking about any of the issues, or your world is protected now?
Well, he hasn't. Look, we're fortunate to live in a world where our circle, be it family and friends, are a very diverse group, and we've got interracial couples, we've got all couples of all different stripes and all different walks of life and all different backgrounds, and kids that look like the entire rainbow. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just had my wife's brother was here, and his wife, and they live in Germany, and she's German, and they've got a couple of kids that look exactly like him.
Okay.
And as of right now, he hasn't experienced everything. And the trick is, I think, how do you find that fine line between getting them prepared without also preparing them too much to where they're always assuming the worst? And how do you find that fine line where they're on guard for things, they know how to protect themselves from things, but they're not also always looking for it? And I don't know, we talk about all the things on social media in today's world, and I think one of the differences, the same things that are happening now have always been happening. We all know that. The only difference is now we see them a lot more. And there's a good side and a bad side to it. The good side is things aren't happening in the dark as much. When something happens, it gets out there. Mm-hmm. The bad side is it's a constant reminder of all those issues and all the fears and all the worries that we have as parents.
I think, too, when we sit down and we look at it, we look at some of the children who have been impacted. Cosby's son was killed randomly out on a road headed up into the hills of Hollywood, and so it's the conversation. I think in looking at growing up in the Midwest, we just knew that we had to be careful. But I guess now that we have this whole idea of all these people being part of the social media, it's more accessible and it's more in your face, which makes it more frightening.
One of the things that's so incredible about that is you still see these same dividing lines, mm-hmm. and they're not so clean. You've got people of all stripes on all sides of these issues, but even when something happens and it's right in our face, and I think we can all agree with basic principles that the murder, the antagonism, the torture, the torment of innocent people, no matter who they are, no matter what they look like, it should not happen.
Right. To anybody.
To anybody. But right. It seems to be happening to certain groups of people based on things that they have no control over, such as the way they look.
Right.
What's amazing is that even in today's world, when you've got cameras that are everywhere, when you've got these things that become viral, and they're put right in people's faces, people that want to believe that there is not a problem will find any excuse, any rationalization, any way that they could try to twist what they're seeing to let us know that our fears are wrong and that we're wrong and that we're just making it up. And you know, it sort of, you know, has brought me to a point where I wonder, are we just speaking a different language, or no matter how much evidence you show somebody of these problems, but they're just simply not going to believe it, not going to buy into it, and not going to care.
Because it's part of their DNA.
Yeah.
What made you publish this as an op-ed or in the newspaper?
You know, I didn't initially publish it as an op-ed. My wife and my son were out of town visiting her family in Houston, and I had gone by myself to grab a bite to eat, and I was doing what we all do these days when you're sitting alone, scrolling through the Facebook or the news or something like that, and was just reading. And I'd obviously been following the Tamir Rice thing as it happened, and wondering, how is anyone going to even try to justify this? And it was the day that the indictment, that the the state attorney's office up in Cleveland announced that they were not filing any formal charges against the office. And it's just, you know, as the father of a little boy who doesn't look that different from Tamir Rice.
Right.
Who was doing, you know, I can't tell you the amount of time I've spent running around in my neighborhood with my neighbors playing cops and robbers with little cap guns. And that was back in the days before they had orange tips and all the other stuff. That this little kid died, and society was so okay with it. It just made me realize that despite all the privilege that I have, despite all the protection that I can give my son, that no matter how dynamic he is, no matter how special he is, how smart he is, how caring he is, everything good that he has to offer, there will be people who solely see him as a black man, and that those people who are going to tend to see him like that probably have all kinds of psychoses and beliefs about what that means, and that he's going to be judged by it, and it just was upsetting me. Because you know that when someone's at that point where they're just going to identify someone by how they look, they've probably got a whole book of beliefs that they've built up for themselves, which aren't
No
changed.
question.
And it hit me at that point that, you know, right now now he's 6, he was 5 at the time, but I can keep him safe now for the most part. You know, he's at school. Well, he's at school with the same friends he's been with since he was a little kid. He's at, you know, a friend's house. You know, he's not dealing with all that stuff, but there's going to come a time in the not too